Hello and welcome. Pilot Wannabe here, and this is just a flight test recording. I haven't recorded in a while, and I've made quite a few additions to my flight rig computer setup. So we're just going to try it out and see how it goes. This is the airport closest to my home. This is CYRO, Rockcliffe, Ontario. And yeah, we're flying X-Plane 10.5, which gives you more frames, which is good. And so I've turned up sceneries and such. This is what we got right now. I've also added a radio stack from Cytec and an analog trim wheel. And so it's all very cool. So let's zoom in and have a look, shall we? There we go. So I've been warming up the ye old Bonanza F-33. And interesting effect, it kicks up a lot of dust when you're not on the runway. And there's no windsock, so at least I'm getting an indication which way the wind's going. If nothing else. Alright, so here we are on the flight deck. Let's check our temps. And we are at flying temp. Cowl flaps open. Parking brakes are set. Should have had our beacon and nav lights on there. Also, this is the Carenado Bonanza F-33 Alpha. And also it's got the reality expansion pack from SimCoders, which I highly recommend. This turns X-Plane into A2A level type flying. Everything has to go by the numbers. Except I skipped my flight check, pre-flight. So anyway, we're going to pick up the altimeter here from my ForeFlight, which you should be able to see, possibly. Anyway, altimeter setting is 3016. There we go. So that gives us about 180 some feet. We'll do it in the standby there, thereabouts. Looks good. So let's get the weather.
Auto/Carenado information Victor. 1400 Zulu weather. Wind light and variable. Visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 17,000 few. 23,000 scattered. Temperature 2.6. Altimeter 3019. Arriving and departing runway 27. Advise on initial contact you have Victor.
Okay, so that's the weather from across the river at Gatineau Airport, and winds are light and variable. And we have the altimeter setting, so we are pretty much good to go that way. 114.6, we've dialed in the Ottawa VOR, and it is to our left. So we're going to track almost west, or pretty much west, toward it, and that track is in front of us. So let's get going, shall we? And because we're on the grass, we're going to have to give it more oomph to get going. So I guess I have to look to see what's going on here. Release parking brake, and we're not moving, which is expected on grass. So we're going to pull back the yoke. Yeah, I got dirty potentiometers in my yoke twitches. That's why I like to make it invisible. So we are going to pull back on the yoke and add power till we start moving. And we'll turn up the audio a little bit. Alright, and giving it a little bit more. I'll get back. Now we're rolling. Start to bring it back. Keeping the aircraft under control. Well, came to a stop. Give it a little bit more. And now she's going to go. Pulling up the power way out. Okay. So idling at 1,000 RPM, that'll keep you moving on pavement. Alright, so we are reasonably heavy loaded. 4 passengers, almost at max gross weight. So trim is at 0, and the trim wheel, there, it's kicked in. It's very precise. I love it. Oh, what is that? Okay. Whoa. Brakes, brakes, brakes.
Approaching runway 0927.
And that's ForeFlight warning me of my approach, which tells me I should go back to the map. And there, from the scenery, is a CL-215 water bomber. Okay. So, I'm not sure if this is the new stock airport scenery from, it comes with 10.5 or not. But anyway, whole short lines aren't really visible. So let's put the parking brake on and do our run up. So, mixture to full, props to full, and we will bring up the throttle 1700 RPM. It's a little bit much. Pulling it back. That's pretty good. Test the right mag, and it has dropped less than 1,000. Back to full, back to 1700, and test the left mag, and it has dropped less than 1,000. Alright, so we're going to exercise the prop governor. Should drop more than 300 RPM, and it does, and we'll do that twice. One of the new effects is the prop disc effect when RPM's lower, which is all cool. Alright, and then back to idle. And one of the annoying things is the pop-up tells me that I'm fouling the plugs because the revs are so low. I am soon ready to turn that off because I know how to fly this aircraft, and not really necessary, I think, but it's a great teaching aid. Alright, so everything's good that way. So, lights. Come on, lights on, and we'll also put the pitot heat on. It's like 16 degrees out there, and as we get higher, it'll probably get chillier, but no clouds, but what the heck? Oh. There is visible moisture, so it is wise and prudent to do that. So lights, camera, we're at 1200, we're on, let's go to alt. Lights, camera, action, and there's nobody around here. It's an untowered field, so we'd make a call. 316 Papa Whiskey, ready to depart, runway 09, departure to the west. Rockcliffe traffic, something of that sort. And so we're very heavy, so we're going to need flaps 1. We can confirm by looking out the window. Flaps are down, and trim is set to neutral, to 0. We are good to go. So parking brake off, clear on the right, clear on the left, flight controls, free and correct, should have done that earlier. But we are golden now. This runway is 2,500 feet. So I am going to, what should we say, do a max effort takeoff. No fooling around. Okay, props to the max, mixture to the max, and we're going to go full power as we step on the brake. And cylinder temps, oil temperatures in the green, amps, everything's positive. We're good to go. Alright, we're going to pull back on the power slightly. About almost 30 inches of manifold pressure. RPMs are good, and we're almost at flying speed. We're going to put some back pressure. Come on. There we go. And gear up. Let the nose down, let her pick up some speed. And look at those frames, that's not good. It's only at about 20. It should be 35 or so. Alright, so we're at a good flying speed now. And, well, we're not quite at 600 feet, 400 feet AGL. So let's start that turn. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a good thing I did this test, because I'm going to have to do something about those frames. That is not good. Okay, so I'm recording with OBS, which does steal some frames. There's 650 feet, flaps up. The nose is going to drop quite a bit. It's going to wanna. Okay, I haven't touched the trim yet. Alright, so we're going to keep the turn going. And we're still climbing. Now our speed is getting up there, so we are going to trim up and nose up for climb speed at 95. VY is 96 knots. Also, we can pull back on the power. Forgot about that. There's 25 inches. And there's 2,500 RPM. Alright. Now we'll let this settle out. I think I gotta lower the nose. Yeah, it's gonna bleed off too much speed. There we go. Let the nose come down some more. Let it build up some speed. So climb power is set. We're above 100 knots. We're going to trim up. Alright, have a look out the window, see how things are. Looks good. Departing to the west. And I think our nose is up too much. Want to limit it to about 1,000 feet per minute. Alright, I think it's time to have a look at our settings. Yeah, I think that's the bad boy right there. I previously had that on high, and I put it to very high, and it's made a big hit. So hopefully on the next go around, after I reset the sound, we'll have much more frames. For now, we're kind of stuck with it. But even at 20 frames, flies rather smooth and nice. We have a lot of trees and a lot of objects. Okay, we're at 2,000 feet. And we're pretty much on track, so we're going to nudge the nose to the right. Now the VOR is in the forest just beyond this quarry over here. So, and that's where that's pointing as well. So we're doing good. Doing very good. Lean the engine a little bit. Get a little bit more performance out of it. So apparently with the relatively new X-Plane 10.5, it does scenery, tall building scenery for downtowns, but only in the US. So I have no scenery for the city of Ottawa here. But the suburbs look great. Okay, so we're coming up on 3,000 feet. I have yet to put the autopilot on. Don't need to, because the poor man's autopilot, known as the trim wheel, works great, especially if you have an analog trim. Electric trim takes forever to get it balanced out just right, to get it to do what you want it to do. Alright, so we're at 1,000 feet. You're going to have to pull back some power and get the nose down and manually keep it at 3,000 feet with yoke effort. And as the aircraft speeds up, more lift is created, which requires more nose down trim. So it's going to probably top out at 140 knots, so I'm going to have to keep this up for a little while also flying straight and keeping it at 3,000 feet. And as you can see, the aircraft is speeding up. Here, pull back the props to 2,300. And working on keeping the nose down, keeping the altitude 3,000 feet, and flying the track that I want. Almost a little bit of a handful, but not much. But sure beats using the autopilot for everything. Okay, so we're still at 3,000 feet. Still flying the track that I want. A little bit more nose down. And we're still accelerating. So this has been the biggest thing for me, learning that you just can't set the trim right away. It takes a while for the aircraft to stabilize once you've set the power. So about 25 years ago, I took flight training for got all of 12 hours worth. But one of the things I still remember is power, pitch, and trim in that order. Set your power, pitch your aircraft, trim it out. Then you will be a happy camper. Alright, so we're 2.5 miles out from our VOR. Which this is something I like to do, is track the VOR and then turn around and fly the approach into Gatineau, which I've kind of memorized. But we don't have to memorize it, because I have it here on the iPad, which I'll bring up for you in just a second. Alright, so we're overflying it. I'm not flying the most accurate track. I think the VOR is down here somewhere. Okay, but close enough, and we're still at 3,000 feet, which is good. Altitude keeping. The analog trim is great for altitude keeping. Okay, so I'm going to my iPad now, and I'll bring up procedures for Gatineau approach, and we're going to do runway 9. VOR runway 9 approach. And, oh, we're still accelerating. A little bit more nose down. Speed is almost topped out. Now, as you can see, I don't have a subscription for Canada. I have a US subscription. It's yet to come, but you can still sort of cheat and see what you need to see. So we need to fly a course of 085 from the VOR. So let's dial that in. And if you've noticed here, that icon there tells you that I have a plugin called Plane Command, which is kind of like a autopilot. So you engage it and you tell it what you want to do. But since I've reset a lot of things, it might be on the free version and not the full version, but we'll find out shortly. Set course 085. Set course 085. Doesn't like it. Set heading 085. Doesn't like a lot of that. Flip COM 1. Flip COM 1. Alright. Doesn't seem to be working, but anyway, doesn't matter. Because we're stable enough. Trim up a little bit so we can get back to 3,000 feet. Because that's where the approach starts. And we'll set in a course here of 085. And then we'll just fly manually to come around and take it out, staying at 3,000 feet. Alright. So part of the gear that I've upgraded, I'm using a monitor that's a 40-inch TV, and it's 2K. And its resolution is so good that you can read these analog dials from far. So I set the field of view to 85 degrees, which lets you see the whole cockpit. So that keeps the, the changing your field of view to a minimum. You can just pretty much fly looking straight ahead. Now we're at 2,800 feet. My altitude keeping is not that great right now. I also have this head shake software from SimCoders as well. You might have noticed the bobble. You only really notice it on the ground when the aircraft is still. It bobbles slightly. And when the winds are jostling the aircraft. Alright, so we're on a good intercept heading now for 085 radial. And we're less than 4 miles out. So, intercepting a radial when you're close to it, it's a little tricky. Well, to do it precisely and smoothly is a little tricky. It's not that big a deal. A little more nose up trim, get us closer to the 3,000 feet we should be at. Okay. And we're almost there. I haven't tried to find the VOR in a while. I think it might be in here somewhere behind that, whatever you want to call it. And it's interesting, flying this aircraft with the reality expansion pack, you really notice some things. If you change your heading or your angle in relation to the wind, even if your power setting is the same, you've got to retrim the aircraft. I thought that you only had to retrim when you change the power, but not so. Alright, so we're 1.2 miles out, so we're really close to the VOR. So we're going to just overfly it and then bring it to a heading of, there it is, it's coming in, to 085. And then we will adjust once we get some distance away from the VOR. Alright, so my little rule is got to be more than 2 miles out before you even think about flying the needles or chasing it. So here we are, we're leveled out, pretty much trimmed out for 3,000 feet. There's the needle coming in. We'll see how far we have to, how much adjustment we have to make, but we're not going to chase it. We're only 1 mile out, basically, right now, at this point. So it doesn't make a lot of sense chasing it, but it seems like we'll be correcting to the left. Now, according to the approach, when we're about 3 miles out, we can start our descent down to 2,400 feet. Alright. So we're 2.4 miles out. We're at 3,000 feet. So we're going to begin to reduce power to 20 inches. And we're going to hold our altitude. And that should start slowing us down before we descend. Alright. So we're exactly 3 miles out, and we have the VOR, and we're tight to it. We're right on the money. And now we're going to let the nose fall and descend to 2,400 feet. I'm going to pull out the power a little bit more. And because we're in the descent and the power's out, cowl flaps closed. Now as we descend, we pick up speed, which creates more lift, which reduces our rate of descent. It's all very interesting, and it all comes to play with this reality expansion pack. So then I reduce the power a little bit more to 15 inches. So we don't want to fly this approach too fast. And we are at 2,700 feet. And we should be at 2,400 feet at Point Hector, which is 7 miles out. So at 7 miles, we should be at 2,400 feet, and we are pretty much there. So I'm going to bring the power back in. And I'm going to trim her out for 2,400 feet. Alright, and so we're going to be there in half a mile. Next is Point Bipra at 11 DME. And we should be at 1,300 at 11 DME. So let's stay on course here. And we're at 7 now. So now we can descend to 1,300 feet. Set altitude, 1,300 feet. Huh. It's not working at all. Alright, so we're going to forget that. We're going to let it descend, and we're going to pull the power back to 1,500, 15 inches. Okay. So just to brief the approach again, we are, this is almost like an LDA approach, VOR DME, and it's offset somewhat. And runway 09, so pretty much almost a straight in approach. Alright, so at Point Bipra, which is at 11 DME and 1,300 feet, that is our final approach fix. So at that point, we are going to go gear down, flaps down. Okay, and that once again is 1,300 feet and 11 DME. Now, I've flown this approach many, many, many times. Because as they say, to get familiar, you should do it in your home area. You learn the landscape features and such. And so, if there's one approach I've memorized, it's this one. Or nearly memorized. Very familiar with it, let's say. Alright, we're coming up on 1,400 feet and 10.9 nautical miles. So, gear down, which will slow us down and put the aircraft down, so we've got to counteract that with back pressure on the yoke. And we're at the speed check, and I put the flaps down, so we've got approach flaps, and we are going to need some up trim, so I don't have to fight this all the time. And we're going to bring up the power back to 20 inches, because the aircraft is really draggy with gear out and the flaps down. Okay, so if we were doing 100 knots, we should be descending at 500 feet per minute, but we're doing less than 100 knots, so we should be on the trim for 400 feet a minute or thereabouts. Okay, and According to the Pappies, we're a little high. So I'm going to pull out the power somewhat and let our rate drop a little bit. Okay. Now it's a clear sky. We can go totally visual, so we can forget about the approach at this point and just go manual. So I want to reduce the power and trim for 80 knots. Alright, so we got the Pappies look happy. I'm adding back pressure and trimming up. Okay, adding back a little power to arrest our rate of descent. Convert that to airspeed. I want to keep it at about 80. So we're in the zone. 80 knots, about 400 feet per minute vertical descent. The Pappies are happy. We're reasonably aligned. We're looking good. Going to go for full flaps now. And down pressure we need. Okay. Alright, so pulling back the power slightly. Alright. Whoa, a little gust of wind there. There we go. 112 vertical feet per minute on the landing. Flaps up. Yoke back. Hold the center line. And yoke all the way back. Let it coast to a stop, but it's never going to make the turn off, so we got to help it with some brakes. Keep it straight. And here is our turn off. Okay. And we need to get back up to a good idle speed of 1,000 RPM. Alright. So we cross the stop line. Bring the aircraft to a stop. Set the parking brake. And pitot heat off, strobe light off, landing light off. You leave the taxi light on. Can bring the transponder to standby. Let's see what we got here on the flaps. The trim. You can reset the trim to 0. And the flaps are already up. And we're looking good. Now, let's have a look at that replay, shall we? Of that landing. Wasn't necessarily my best, but it felt more than adequate. Okay, so now let's go with the runway view. And what I like to do is to back that up to the runway lines, and then over to the side a bit. Zoom in and let it rip. Now, as I'm thinking, there's a couple things I forgot to do. I didn't check to make sure we were on the fullest tank, and I did not go max prop and max on the mixture, full prop and mixture. Does it look like I'm smoking the engine there? Perhaps I did. Yikes. Anyway, that does not look good for the engines. Okay, reasonable landing. A little concerned about that smoke. I've never seen that before. Yeah, I think it wasn't getting enough fuel and the RPMs weren't high enough. Alright, so the weird thing is that I haven't figured out how to fix is if I go right to get it back and then I take it out of replay, the aircraft crashes. Watch this. Ah, Didn't crash this time. Okay. So we're sitting on the runway, and it looks like it's smoking. Now, let's check the outside temperature. I can't see any reason why it would be, because the engine is still leaned. Maybe it was too much. Well, let's shut her down right here and check, because we can't do it till the aircraft is shut down. So, very important, avionics master off, and park brakes are set. Cut off the fuel, lights off, and mags off, and fuel off. Alright, now let's see if anything needed fixing. Each of the cylinders are okay. Everything seems alright. Alright, it's just one of those weird things. Anyway, thank you for joining me on this test flight where I didn't get the frames I was looking for. And hopefully she'll be all tuned up and ready for a really good flight on Pilot Edge. Get some ATC going, and should be very enjoyable. Till then, Pilot Wannabe saying, see you next time.